All right. One of my favorite parts of Path of Exile, and by one of my favorites, I do believe it is my favorite, is to tinker with builds and to try to make unique items that are garbage work pretty well and do it on a decent budget. So this is one of the builds I put together to try to synergize these two claws, Replica Allure and Allure, and to use these synergies in an interesting manner. So for this one, you gain phasing for 10 seconds with use of all skill, 15% increased movement while phasing. We have Vol Reeve, one of my favorite skills in the game. That's going to be proccing this phasing. Now for the Replica, you gain 50 life when you taunt an enemy. You gain Onslaught for 1 second on killing a taunted enemies. Enemies taunted by you take 10% increased damage. So, how are we going to taunt? We have the champion ascendancy in the Scion node, which 100% chance to taunt on hit. That's going to be synergizing with this 50 life when you taunt an enemy, gain Onslaught for 1 second on killing taunted enemies, and enemies taunted by you take 10% increased damage. That is the best I think I can synergize it from within the ascendancy passive tree. So I'm using these two claws together, the Replica and the regular, just because it's kind of fun and you can kind of synergize with it. Now, Snakebite is a great synergy with Dark Ray Vectors. So this is going to be giving me Frenzy charges. And then I'm using this bad boy here to generate Frenzy charges. But on top of that, Bleeding You Inflict deals 4% damage faster per Frenzy charge, 4% damage multiplier for bleeding, while Frenzy charges, plus 15% chance to cause bleeding. Now, this bleeding may not seem like a lot of damage, but you're adding in a pretty significant amount of damage if you manage to synergize flat damage over time. And how I'm doing that is with this note here, Perfect Agony. This makes my crit multi apply to damage over time. So this is primarily a poison build, but that bleed is a nice little add. And the fact that I can synergize the bleed and I can synergize the frenzy charges, it's extremely nice. And since this helmet is dog crap and no one uses it, you can get +1 to power charge and regenerate life on it. And I think I got this for 15 chaos. A dual corrupt with power charges for 15 chaos. And then I'm able to grab this power charge up here. I've already had this Carcass Jack. I think it was 1 divine for a 6 link. These right here were a chaos apiece. This right here with the spell suppress was I think 5 chaos. And this with right here with the +1 to maximum frenzy was 20 chaos. This right here with, since it was corrupted, I believe it was only 20 chaos. I kind of forgot. It was pretty cheap, inexpensive. Now this is good for the more damage because that's going to apply to the bleeds that we're hitting. Now, since we only have a 15% chance to bleed, we're not going to be running this right here, and we don't have enough passive points. It's too much passive pressure to come over here and grab these because you would need to get your bleed chance significantly higher. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to focus on the one bleed and get the biggest bleed possible with these claws. And fast attack speed is going to help by proccing the highest bleed we could possibly have on the enemy because the bleeds are going to overwrite. Now, this node here, this node is extremely good because it is universal damage over time. There's not very many sources of universal damage over time, but we have one here. This increased duration and effect is really good for poison, not so good for bleed normally, but the fact that we only have a 15% chance to bleed, that increased duration is actually kind of nice. Now, we are primarily going the frenzy route. Everything here is pretty basic. I'm using spell suppressed damage is lucky because I think I'm only at like 70%, and that lucky is going to move it up into the 90 range. I think that's a very cool node that they've added. I like the crit node that was on it before better, but that's still a pretty cool node. This bad boy here was just 15 chaos. Lethal Pride is really good, and I happened to hit, I just randomly grabbed it. I didn't do any of that searching stuff. I happened to hit one that had a lot of nodes that I could use. 20% melee damage, I can use that. Armor, not very useful in this build because I'm choosing to use Purity of Elements to get rid of my ailments, to give me ailment immunity, instead of using Determination, but I could throw Determination on there and kind of deal with the ailments. I could also use my Brass Dome to give me 5 to max all res and armor. But I don't want to use the Brass Dome because that's a little more of an expensive item, a little too high end for this build. I'm trying to keep it on somewhat of a relatively small budget. Then we got 20% armor, 20% armor, plus 1 of maximum fortification, which usually is kind of a dead node, but on this Scion Ascendancy, I have a 50% chance to fortify, so I get free fortify, so I might as well pump it up. Then we got another fortify, 20% armor, 4% life, regenerate 1% life, burning damage is dead, another fortification, and another fortification. So I get an extra 4 stack of fortification, which is 4% reduced damage. Now I wish these nodes right here, they didn't ruin them. These are now ruined. A 10% chance to fortify with melee stunning hits. These are dog shit nodes. Why the hell would they add these in? So in order to grab this node, I'd have to pat down here, and these two nodes are also kind of broken and useless because on this node you get fortifying hits against unique enemies have 100% increased fortification. So you don't really need these 2 extra 40s if you're getting 100 here. This whole node is ruined. They ruined this whole node. It's kind of pointless. Now I'd really like to path in here so I can get this 2% reduced duration of ailments per fortification. Now if I could path over this way, I'd be getting an extra, so 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. I'd be at 30 fortification stacks, which would be 3% life regeneration and 60% reduced duration of ailments. 60% reduced duration of ailments is probably good enough to where you can just ignore ailment duration, or you can stack a couple. You probably want to get another 40% on ignite, so you can't be ignited, so you're not taking that damage over time. Maybe mess with some shock, and then that also applies to bleed, and I think all the other ones. This node here is extremely powerful for the 12% mono reservation efficiency of skills, which allows me to run what I'm currently running, which is a Blood and Sand, Defiance Banner, Precision, Grace, and Purity of Elements. My defense is pretty bad, but as I'm running through the maps, these potions will pop, and it'll increase my armor and evasion, like so. And then a little bit more happens as I'm running through, so it gets pretty good when I'm actually mapping. Some of that comes from frenzy charges and other stuff like that. The claw masteries are really good. I'm using 3 of them. Inherent attack speed from dual wielding is doubled while wielding 2 claws. 10% life leech is instant per equipped claw. Supported skills with Nightblade have 40% increase effect of elusive. I have this increase effect of elusive on this dagger here. Now the elusive, the Nightblade kind of got nerfed when they fixed, well, I wouldn't call it nerfed, they just fixed it. I don't believe it originally had the intent of being able to overwrite Nightblade. Nightblade is still very strong for a budget. That is the build. I have one jewel that I would consider to be too good for this node, and that's this one right here. Damage over time, live chaos, and physical damage leeches mana. If I were to sell this, this is probably a divine worth of a jewel. But beyond that, the other jewels are just double res, attack speed with claw, double res, attack speed with dual wielding, and these are like 20C a pop. Jewels can be pretty pricey. And beyond that, there's nothing really expensive. The Bottled Faith I'm using just because I have a Bottled Faith. I could easily put a regular crit potion on there, but I haven't rolled a good crit potion, so I don't want to mess with that. So this is the synergies, and I'm also going for this one so I can get free power charges, and this is how I'm proccing my elusive. I could use Withering Step, but I kind of hate Withering Step, and I like having Steel Skin on my left click, primarily for the bleed, but also it's a nice little guard skill. I like to use it to get rid of the guard. Now, the question is, does it work? Was I able to make an effective build with 2 garbage claws and a very minimal budget? And because of the synergies, I believe I have accomplished the goal. I haven't checked the POB. It's probably, with a full stack of frenzy charges, it's probably maybe 1,900,000 or so, which for T16 farming is usually pretty good if you can get your defenses up. Now the defenses are not great. I can kind of get one shot pretty easily. And you can see when I'm mapping around, I'm at 50% physical damage reduction, and most of that is from my fortification. Now if I were to get armor, that would increase it more, but with evasion, it's not so bad. You'll get popped every now and then. You have a couple feel bad moment. And obviously I don't recommend this build. I'm just doing this as a fun little experiment because I like to play this game for this specific purpose. To have fun, to experiment, to try weird and goofy shit out. And that's what I do. I really wanted to do the claw nodes because those new claw nodes are really excellent, but I've played Reeve on like 2 leagues ago, 3 leagues ago. Can't remember. I think it was 3 leagues ago. And I really played the hell out of Reeve, so I'm kind of over Reeve, so I wanted to try something different. The league before that, I played Exsanguinate, so Cyclone Shockwave is what's gotten most of my attention. I'm not sure what I'm going to be building next, but right now, this is the current setup. Ooh, more Snakebite. I haven't fought the Sentinel with it. They might be good, it might not be good. Probably won't be because the damage is super low and they're going to easily hit me and kill me, but I'll try it right now. Pop a portal so I don't have to mess with it after I die. And by Sentinel, I do mean 100%. It's rippy for all builds. All builds will get ripped on 100% Sentinel for the most part from time to... Oh, that wasn't the Sentinel. This is just a Essence. As you can see, some of the enemies take quite a bit to get knocked down because 1 million damage is not that high for this game. But you have pretty good life regeneration because of that instant life regen node that's on there. You'll see that I can... He's hitting me with some type of bleed or else I'd be regenerating faster. Something to prevent me. Could be the little ring that I'm in, the O ring of pain. I don't have any passive nodes on either of those, which is kind of lame. So I'll just pump these up just to get 100%. And so I can die. And my Frenzy Charge is dropped off, so it's going to be real rough. I'm going to want to dash around and not stay still, which is a little awkward because my previous build I stayed still, so I got to get used to dashing around. And by dash, I mean whirling blades. It's pretty fast with whirling blades. I'm pretty sure I won't be able to kill these guys with this setup. This is not suitable for this type of content, especially when they have energy shield. But I'll give it a shot. Can always make up for the lack of damage and survivability with mechanics. Well, other players can. I can't really. Not very good at this game. But other players... Ooh, memory. I like those memories. Other players can make up for it. But another reason this... I'm showcasing this a little bit is those bleed procs that I have on them are extremely good when you kite them. You get that one really big bleed with the more maximum damage, and hopefully you get a good bleed stack on them. Then they run and chase you, and then they're bleeding and taking a ton of damage. Way more damage than you would expect when they're moving like that. And yeah, that is very slow. Maybe not quite 1 million damage, but I'm pretty sure it's about 1 million. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to calculate your damage. And I actually cleared 100 and only died once on it, which isn't too bad, considering I'm using some pretty substandard gear here. Now if we look at my defensive, my evasion's pretty high. 83% is pretty high. 41,000 evasion, which is why I'm using Grace instead of Determination. I could throw Determination on. Let's see what happens when I get rid of Grace. But Grace really... that'll put me down pretty low. 66 when I'm full mapping, which is what you'll be doing with the build like this. You'll be doing full mapping. So maybe Determination will be better. But I like the Grace. I like just not getting hit. You could probably get to level 93 using this method, but after 93, I think you're probably going to end up dying too many times to actually level up beyond 93, unless you're really just doing the most boring content ever. But as you can see, it works. It's also pretty quick. It's a pretty fast little zippy build. You get a lot of movement speed to zip around with. Could be because all my other builds are so slow that this feels fast, but it is pretty fast. Now you can take this build and you can just carbon copy this build and throw on 2 rare claws and you actually have a legitimate build. Or you can throw on 2 wasp nests, which are significantly better claws. Now the wasp nests aren't going to do as good with that bleed proc because they have slightly lower base damage, but bleed proc is just a nice to have. It's not really that nice. It's not really that needed in terms of the damage. You see here, the damage is pretty bad, but I am still able to get that fortification. Now, in my skills, I had to... I guess I can't look at it with this build. I'm used to my cast on stun build when I can talk and then go to my skills. So this damage is actually feels bad to get to that boss, but it's not too bad. And I think of the mod on here, he had increased life. Unique boss has 37% increased life, so it wasn't as bad as it looked. It would have been 37% faster than that. But on this build, I had to anoint this, and I anointed this for a couple of reasons. This one's probably a better anoint, but it is a little low on the damage because you're doing 30% less damage with hits. So this 100% fortification helps quite a bit, and so does the armor and evasion while fortified. So those are both pretty nice nodes. So I anointed that, and it's cheap. The most expensive oil it has is a black oil, and you can get a black oil pretty quick and pretty easy. So it doesn't increase the cost too much. Now, the synergies for this build are actually quite nice in terms of how it synergizes with the Scion and the choices I took within the Scion. We'll do a quick mine run. Mine runs are, I think it's important to do a mine run because mine is an extremely unique and fun piece of content. So if you can't do delve mining with the build, then it's kind of a failed build in my opinion. And delve mining has its own little unique challenges that most builds can handle, but some builds kind of struggle in the mines if they're a little just set differently. And a build like this has the potential to struggle in a mine simply because of how mobile the build is, and when you get to that final mine boss, it's not a very mobile situation. You're kind of stuck in a little zone, so you got to fight within the zone. But using Reeve is extremely nice in this. I tried to use dual strike, but in order to get dual strike, I had to path to the left a little bit and grab those nodes, and it really was too much point pressure in order to grab those nodes that make the strike skill splash and target another enemy. So you'd have to do something with the splash in order to make dual strike work, which I guess you could do if you really wanted to. And you can see it's plenty enough damage for the mines for the most part. Have to run the stun Pantheon because I don't want to be stunned. This is what I was talking about, how you gotta kind of navigate around it, and it's a little more difficult with a build like this. It's highly mobile, but the evasion kind of just carries you because you're mostly missing. Any one of these Roas actually hits me, I'm probably Toastios, but wouldn't know until they hit me. I'm a Chaos Res. I haven't really done anything to spec out the Chaos Res, so Chaos damage is huge on this character. But that's just because I'm just doing this for the fun. This isn't an actual build. I just slapped it together with a bunch of really cheap stuff or stuff I already had on me. So that works pretty well. Now I'm going to do a damage tester on my damage test guy. I have one boss that I always damage test on, and it's going to be brutal because my low chaos resistances. And this boss does a lot of chaos damage. So I might not be able to complete it, and I'll be able to bounce out if I don't. I always like to corrupt those because snakebite gloves are one of my favorites. So let's go to stuff. This guy is probably one of the worst bosses in the game. I hate fighting him. He's just a terrible boss through and through. But one good thing about it is you just run him white, and it's a pretty good DPS check in terms of like how much damage you're going to be doing to bosses. So that's mostly what I use this fight for, is to try out my ideas on this boss to see just how much damage I'm doing and how quickly I'm doing it. But because of my low chaos resistances, I'm pretty sure this is going to be extremely rough. Gotta proc those frenzy charges up high enough. And the evasion's pretty nice. Oh, it didn't kill me in one shot. You can see the damage is quite bad. Quite bad on this boss. Most other builds I'm running, he's at least half life before it goes to this. And if I'm doing like a real, I guess I should actually look on where it's heading. Down and to the right. If I'm doing a real build, he basically dies. And chaos damage, which is great, because I should just die from the beginning and not have to mess with that. Let's go back in. I'll fight this boy. And prime reason why this is a terrible fight. I'm not going to continue it. That takes too long. I really hate that fight. I only use it as a DPS check. I have no desire to kill that guy ever. One of the worst fights in the game. That's my interesting little idea. I did it as just like a little side project to keep me entertained while I think of my next build. And my next build, I am going to try to do something with this unique here. I did a build with the last league. It failed. It wasn't very good, but I went and got this Void Forge. It was only 1 divine, and it's pretty well rolled. The DPS is a little low, but the increased area of effect is positive. The life is positive. The attack speed's a little low, but not that low. The attack speed's positive. So everything's on it is positive, and the attack damage is not the lowest. It's kind of like right in the middle on the chaos damage. So I'm going to try to figure something out to do with that, but in order to do so, I'm probably going to have to level up a Pathfinder, because I want to do a Pathfinder using the Wither nodes, because I really like the Wither node that they added to the Pathfinder. I think it's excellent, and I don't see a lot of people using it. Of course, I'm not watching a lot of people, but I feel it might be not getting the sunshine that it deserves, the light. I think that Wither node is extremely good, and I want to build something around that to be able to have a bunch of Wither stack to increase my chaos damage and use this sword. I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll do something janky. I bought an extra one of those claws. I don't know if it's in the claw node. And it had this guy on it. Viper Strike and Pestilent Strike deals 25 increased damage per frenzy charge. So I might try to roll Viper Strike or Pestilent Strike on that sword. It might only be a claw node. I can't remember if these can roll anywhere, but it might only be a claw node. And I'm not using Viper Strike here originally because I wanted to have the bleed as well, and Reeve works better for this, and I was kind of going for a whole synergy thing. But Viper Strike is one of those skills, in my opinion. It is a trash tier skill that is just complete garbage. Complete garbage. So Viper Strike is something that's been on my radar to try to actually build a build around. Another one is a melee puncture. Puncture is a pretty good bow skill because you can do it at range, but I'm not sure anyone has ever used puncture as a melee skill, so I kind of want to try puncture as a melee skill. And when you look at it as a melee skill, it is absolute garbage tier because of its attack damage effectiveness and effectiveness of added damage and attack speed. This is just a garbage melee skill. They really ought to modify it so if you're using it as a melee skill, it has increased attack speed or increased attack damage. It really shouldn't be the exact same for both a bow build and a melee build, in my opinion, or give it some type of like free splash. You got to do something to color this for melee builds, or else it's only going to be used for bows, which I'm pretty sure it is only used for bows. That's it for the build. Those are some ideas that I have. I'm obviously probably just gonna dumpster most of this stuff or just stash it in the inventory and then focus on some other kind of build. Hope you guys are having fun in Path of Exile. Not focusing too much on farming, not focusing too much on your DPS numbers, but actually focusing on enjoying yourself playing the game. A lot of people will get a little mindless with this game and just every day they do a grind and they're not having fun with the game. At least that's my assumption. Maybe everyone's having a blast, even with that grind. But for me, some of the most fun you can have in this game is just tinkering around with stuff. Finding an item and say, can I make this item work? Finding a skill, saying, can I make this skill work? How can I synergize with that? Every now and then you'll get lucky and you'll end up getting like a blood notch jewel because you want to play with it. And you buy the blood notch jewel when it's super cheap, and it shoots up to multiple divines after you bought it for very cheap, which is what I did. Blood Notch node and that stun jewel I got for sub divine, and now they're multiple divine. Works out very well. I always like to try to buy all the unique items of the new sets, but I haven't done a very good job of that this league. I try to buy them pretty early, not like week 1, but maybe week 2, before anyone else has made them hot. Like the amulet that turns chaos damage over time into regeneration over time. I haven't bought that one yet. And then the new body armor where armor applies the chaos damage. Haven't purchased that one yet either. I kind of intend to buy those at some point, but I don't really see them, because they're both defensive nodes, I don't really see them becoming ultra expensive just because of the way they handle their defenses. There's better ways to get life regeneration, and you gotta do a lot of finagling to use that amulet. And then the amulet's also kind of a dud because there's so many other strong amulets in the game. I'll do I don't need to do a quick gear recap because the gear is pretty lame. This one's just to give me some armor and evasion and mostly intelligence and cap my reses. This one reduces the cost. This is actually a pretty good ring that I've had for a while. And this one's just a base ring, not that good. And rarity and fire damage. It's good for someone else, but it's not really good for this build. Has the fire damage on it, which is dead node, but I might be able to sell that. Fire damage makes it pretty good. And then the rarity of items if someone's using this as a farmer. But the fire damage kind of clashes with the physical damage, except for the fact that Molten Strike is so strong this league. But I think a lot of people that are using Molten Strike are kind of turning that into poison. Actually, that'd be a really good skill to use with that sword I was talking about. Molten Strike with Echo Forge, because you can deal only chaos damage. You deal no elemental or no physical, and you get a big old chunk of flat chaos damage. You can just use Molten Strike with the new... Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. Everyone's doing Molten Strike. I might as well join the Molten Strike party. Do some Molten Strike with this bad boy. Assuming it works, that'll probably be my next project. Maybe I can do it on a non-Pathfinder, but I really want that Pathfinder known. I want to capitalize on the Wither. And I wonder if the Wither will proc on each one of the Molten Strike balls, and then they bounce back and forth, so you're just going to instantly proc to 15 Wither stacks, which will be pretty damn cool. All right, that is it. Hope you guys enjoy the league.